Perhaps at this point I will start to open it up. And what I'll do is take 3 or 4 questions in a go, as it were. And I'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I'll do that side. Okay. And if you could be quite brief and say who you are.
Of course. David Allen Green, shortlisted for last year's Orwell blogging prize and next year's blogging prize. Anybody who has read George Orwell's essay, Books versus Cigarettes, knows how uncomfortably close he would be to his near contemporary Alderman Roberts in his view of household economics. If, on the basis of that, George Orwell was the public schoolboy at the dispatch box, rather than George Osborne or David Cameron, what actually would he have done differently?
Let me take more questions. I'll get back. I could answer to this. I think I did. Were you saying? Yeah.
My name's Louise, and I'm a trade unionist. I'd just like to ask the panel the fact no one's mentioned the 1.3 trillion amount of money which was there to get the banks out of the crap, and yet no one's mentioned that about we're all paying for that 1.3 trillion globally spent to bail the banks out. No one's mentioned as well 70 billion is lost through tax evasion, yet I don't hear Rupert Murdoch being described as a benefit cheat. And yet it's always the poor who pay for this. 25 billion is lost through avoidance. Loopholes are easy. We can close tax havens tomorrow. We can stop going into stupid, futile wars, and we can scrap Trident. There are ways forward. We can invest in the public sector. And I'm sorry about the issue of pensions. There's a superannuation bill going through Parliament at the moment which will make things worse for civil servants. They will lose a lot more of their pension. The average pension for a civil servant is 4,200. Not very gold-plated, is it? Sorry, as a trade unionist, I'm extremely angry. I'm angry for workers. I was on the demonstration yesterday, and I would encourage people to get involved in an anti-cuts campaign and get on the demonstration on Saturday, because this is outrageous. This is an ideological attack on the poor.
Recently, right, Goldsmith. I was obviously I do quite a lot of criticism, independent analysis, but it seems to me that it kind of misses the kind of cynical political calculus that has driven this, as Alan Johnson said. This was an ideological attack, masquerading as an economic necessity. And so my question really is for our amiable Kiwi student activist apostate, who seems to me to say 2 kind of contradictory things. I mean, one is that we should concentrate absolutely on outcomes rather than inputs, and therefore presumably that we should only be investing our welfare in people who are going to be productive as a result. And then goes on to say that we should consider the thought that would actually generate new ways of doing things, presumably less expensively. And yet here, one of the biggest attacks within this particular cut spending review is, of course, on universities. And as we've already seen, that one of the priorities is research. Research is to be prioritised by its kind of widget production, i.e. it has to have an immediate commercial advantage. Whereas in fact, any kind of analysis of the output of research over the last century has been that actually the clear blue skies thinking produced the most important advances in mankind, not things that immediately went into production for boots. So actually it seems to me there's a complete contradiction there between the idea that all of our money needs to go into generating new ideas and new thinking, and actually a kind of mechanistic model that is actually about just ensuring that we know those that can afford political power get the best benefit out of what's coming through the door this week. So I would like you to address that.
Well, I have a kind of comment and a question. Sorry, I'm Laurie Penny, I'm a blogger and a journalist. I have a comment and a question. It seems to me that in its kind of discussion, this kind of whether or not the cuts are aggressive or progressive, and this sort of abachistic narcissism that of of the economics here, and then moving on to a discussion of whether or not the poor are lazy. The panel is almost allowing the ideology of the right to set the terms of this debate.
Yes.
I think we need to say, kind of make it very, very clear what's happening here, not just in Britain but across the world, which is that the financial failings of the rich are being blamed on the moral failings of the poor. And I think that's very much I think this would be something that would shock Orwell, but possibly not surprise him, in that the poor are being blamed yet again for something that is a much bigger trend that people have no control over. There's, there has been a huge and fundamental change in the nature of the working class, not just in this country but across the world, as there's been a revolution in the nature of capital and profit. So. But I'm sorry if this is rambling, because I've not slept last night. The reason I didn't sleep last night is because for the 4th time in 3 years, I was in an emergency room with a young friend of mine who tried to end her life because she was this is not the same friend of mine, there's 4 different young people I know who are at the sharp end of the benefit system and the employment system. So my question to Patrick is, if he really thinks that people should be chipping in and helping here, do you want to come back with me? Because we can really do with a hand.